an independent investigation, but how independent could it be when he had obvious ties to people like Ken Frazier, Tom Corbett, and others on the board? They allowed for Louis Freeh to conduct a media circus in Philadelphia where he dramatically condemned Joe Paterno, among others, and without concrete evidence. I was at that press conference in Philadelphia. I sat in the back of the room with 5 other alumni, and when we tried to ask questions, we were not allowed to do so. The board, and no one from the university administration was there that day. They could not ask any questions because of their absence. A few days later, the executive committee held secret negotiations with the NCAA and allowed them to use the Freeh report to punish an innocent football program. They asked for no investigation from the NCAA. Erickson says that Penn State was threatened. Ed Ray, head of the executive committee of the NCAA, says that Emmerich was never authorized to use the death penalty. So if the board was fraudulently coerced into accepting sanctions, then why aren't they crying foul? Why aren't they doing something about it? Why aren't they taking legal action? Why aren't they protecting the integrity of the university as well as the football program? They're spending money hand over fist. They say it's coming from a rainy day fund. That's one heck of a rainy day fund where they spent already over $41 million. They removed everything that was associated with Coach Paterno and the players. They removed not only the statue, but the wall behind it. That wall commemorated the hard work of hundreds of football players, some of which here with me today. They've lied about their association with key players such as Freeh and Corbett and the Second Mile. Many of them don't want to hear from the alumni. I have 2 letters here with me today that were addressed to executive member Stump. And what she did was she refused acceptance with return to sender. One of these letters was from an alumna who could not be with us today because she is in terrible physical condition, but all she wanted to do was express her desires of what she felt she wanted the board to know. But, of course, it didn't happen. Yesterday was a disgrace. Ken Frazier, the man that you heard who's spoken here today, threw a tirade at the committee meeting which displayed his ongoing willingness to even consider the Freeh report and its ability to, in its completeness. But it's undeniably flawed. Louis Freeh's background is tainted and questionable. Thornburg, Clementi, and Berlin have impeccable credentials and integrity, which has never been questioned. The Paterno-Sollers report stands on its own. Mr. Frazier again alludes to that you must be in one of 2 groups, one that you are and care about child victims, and the other just people looking for the truth. I think both can be done. I think we can help both groups out to satisfy their divide. Mr. Frazier also showed a disdain yesterday for due process, which is the mainstay of our society. It's part of our values here in this country. In fact, it's in our Bill of Rights. It's the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. But he says that with regard to employment issues, such as with Paterno, he's not bound by due process. Joe Paterno was a loyal employee of Penn State for 61 years. He was the most productive staff member on so many levels and the face of Penn State. They fired him in a theater of emotional chaos without facts, but certainly he was not accused or indicted by any judicial authority. They didn't have the decency to speak with him, and Penn Staters everywhere, all they want is for this board to seek the truth. In a conversation I had with Mr. Frazier, he stated that he hired Louis Freeh without ever meeting him, interviewing him, and I think this is at the root of the problem. He also indicated to me he knew that Louis Freeh had an interest in Pepper Hamilton. I don't know how either of these men could legitimately represent the interest of Penn State, especially in the Special Investigative Committee. I just don't know how it's possible. In so much as what has gone on here today, I think you've seen that there is still a great divide between board members and especially with the alumni trying to communicate with the board. All we're doing is asking that the trustees take a look at the Solers report and give it a chance. The Paterno's benevolence in terms of providing this report has given them an opportunity to take another look at this. We want them to revisit it. And in closing, I don't know what else we as players can do other than support the rest of the alumni. I know that we support each other in what we are doing. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to take them at this time, or any of our players will be glad to take them at this time. Tom, would you like to say anything?
No, I think you've done well. Thank
you. It's been a long day.
Yeah. Ken Frazier, for one, said he asked you, read the Solers report. Like, how do you want the board to read it again, or what would you like to see them do with it?
Well, I think the first what they have to do is admit that it's incomplete. They've been very unwilling at this point to even consider the things that they can deal with. We all know that there's some trials coming up. But I think they need to look at what they have done negatively. They need to communicate with the alumni. They're telling them that they want to go in this direction. You know, the easy path that Ken Frazier has described is just that. It's easy. Don't go back. Don't revisit. Don't change history. But we as players, we as alumni are saying, we want the honorable path. Okay, and there's a big difference.
What's your name, and can you spell it?
Brian Masella.
Right here, Brian.
We have some things that you would like to be done with regard to restoration of Paterno memory.
You guys want to help me out on that? In terms of restoring his legacy?
Yeah.
First of all, they need to honor him. I think they need to apologize to the Paterno family. I think in terms of the accomplishment of these men and the men of 6 decades, they need to restore the wall that they tore down. These men weren't accused of anything. The monument that was there, the plaques that were there, not only represented the hard work and deeds of these men, but all alumni shared in that. That was pride for them.
Yep.
They visited. They still visit it there today. If you were to go down that avenue where the monument was in the berm of that hill, people still visit there today. So it means a lot to Penn Staters. I don't care if it means in terms of what they saw 30 years ago or how they cheered for us. We are representatives not only of our team, but of all alumni.
Is there anything in the actual pre-report, in the documents, that you guys take issue with, aside from stuff about Joe Paterno that you were, of course, talking about, some of you guys were talking about in the session?
How about somebody else answering that question?
Well, yeah. What about the, what I would be concerned about is the leap that Freeh took in claiming that there's a conspiracy. There's no evidence of a conspiracy. We looked at a couple of emails, but we know that there were 12 people that knew about the 2001 situation. And yet, what evidence indicates that there was some communication amongst those people? None. There's no evidence of that. I mean, for you to believe that Joe Paterno knew that children were being raped, I mean, you would have to think that every time he saw Jerry Sandusky with a child, as an assistant, after he retired as a coach and came to practices, that he acknowledged that and knew that Sandusky was going to abuse that child. That's preposterous.
I was curious if there's anything aside from stuff involving Joe Paterno that you guys took issue with in the free report.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I looked at the free report, there was one important thing where they went to outside counsel to ask outside counsel what they should do. And I'm guessing it's going to be either to report or not to report. And since Mr. Free couldn't interview, or our outside counsel, Wendell, wouldn't be interviewed, I still don't know what our outside counsel told our administrators to do. Still have no idea. Now, if you look at it, if they told our administrators to report and they did not, whether it was President Spanier or Mr. Schultz or Mr. Curley, guys, that's against the law. And if they told them not to report, then they followed exactly what the university's council told them to do. I think Mr. Frazier said, let's not go down a black hole. I mean, I have to say, let's go down the black hole and find out what that was.
I think that Anthony Lebrano's comment regarding getting Mr. Free on campus to meet with a small group of trustees is the best thing that came out of that portion of the meeting. That has to be done, and there has to be some discourse. And I know that he has not responded, or cares not to respond, and chooses not to respond. But I think that's one of the most important things that came out of that portion of the hearing.
He meaning Free.
Mr. Free. There should be some communications directly with other members of the board besides that committee to discuss that report.
They paid $8.1 million.
Terrible.
The other thing that we heard from several of you up there today was pushing back against the NCAA sanctions. Is that kind of a consensus opinion?
Yeah, I'd like to address that, because that's my main thing is, you know, what you're seeing here in front of you, you're going to lose 15 of those people every year, because we affect not only Penn State and the Penn State atmosphere there and the culture there in a positive way, we affect people all over the country. I have 4 kids. 3 of us were athletes at Penn State, 2 in football, 1 in track. I have a kid in Virginia that's a teacher. I have a kid in Texas that's a teacher. I have 1 in Philadelphia that's a teacher. And I have a son that's playing football in Minnesota. They all affect their neighbors, their workplaces in a positive way, and in a way that people want to be close to you. You become something, I hate to say special, but I feel that that's kind of what we are at Penn State. It's not just athletes. It's athletes, it's students, it's alumni, it's the whole community there. We have a pride, and we understand how to do things because we had this quirky old man that coached football, and he stayed in his habits, and he stayed in his behaviors, and he taught us life lessons. I may not have agreed to run the ball up the middle, but I will never question his character and the things that he taught this university. And I think it's a disservice for us to stand here and allow them to take away, 45 or 50 or 60 individuals that will not have that opportunity to come to Penn State, to play football, to represent the university and be part of that culture that they helped create.
The same man helped the entire university, not just the football program. Philanthropy, fundraising, service, everything. It's not just football related. It's the entire university.
I think what you're
Graduating
looking
the
at,
players, graduation rate.
I think what you're looking at with the NCAA sanctions is this. My son, my youngest son, is in compliance in NCAA athletics. When I talked with him while this was going on, I said, Steve, what NCAA rules have we broken? And he knows the rule book. He lives in it every day, and he goes, Dad, you guys haven't broken any rules, and I don't understand how somebody could bring sanctions against Penn State.
I believe the free report even said no NCAA rules were violated.
Bingo!
And they used the free report as a basis for the sanctions, and yet they still, it says in there no rules were violated.
And yet, when you get down to, oh, gee whiz, they threatened the death penalty against us, bottom line, guys, I would have looked at them and said, fantastic. We're taking this to court, and we're going to find out if you have the authority to do that. But nobody, I mean, and now this isn't the Board of Trustees, this is the university who agreed to it. And by the way, there was nobody on the Board of Trustees that said, hi, I think you might have made a mistake. You know,
President had no backbone, Mr. Erickson.
yeah.
One other question on this line, though. I think I heard two things today. Some people said that there were a few people that, at least one anyway, that said that the majority of the board members should resign. They'd like to see them resign. I heard another person say, if you go back and try and right your wrongs, I'll support you. Do you guys have any consensus on that? About do you think the current board members or the members who helped fire Paterno, for example, should resign? Or can they be rehabilitated?
Well, let me answer that. They haven't acquitted themselves well. So whether or not they deserve a second chance or not is up to them, in a way. I mean, they have opportunities. I talked about that today. They have an opportunity for a second chance because new information, a new viewpoint of what happened at Penn State with Jerry Sandusky has come out. Thornburg, Clemente, and have come up with something that makes a lot of sense. We believe it. That's the Joe we know. This board has tried to have it both ways. They tried not to discuss it, but at the same time they accepted everything. They accepted the free report. They accepted the sanctions that were based upon the free report. They passed judgment on the people involved. In fact, they did that in the first day. They fired Joe without talking to him. They assumed his guilt. They thought the worst of him. They thought the worst of Grant Spanier as well. So from the very beginning, right, they set up something that now they say, well, you know, let's move on. Let's keep going. They've created so much wreckage, financial and otherwise, right, from the very beginning and everything they've done. And now we're supposed to believe that you know, it's all best for us to move on, that none of this really matters in the end. Let's get this great university back on its wheels. There is so much wreckage laying all over the road that you cannot let this stand, right? Questions have to be answered right. In all of our activities in life, questions have to be answered right. If you leave them unanswered, all you do is leave an open wound, and may last for generations. You can't let that happen. We've got to solve this, particularly for a man like Joe Paterno, 61 years, one of the greatest men any of us have ever met. We're going to let these guys steamroll him, fire him, and just accept things and say we've never reviewed them, but we're going to accept it anyway, right? He's condemned by this board. Now, should this board have a second chance at it? Yes, they should. They've been given the opportunity for a second chance. Let's see what they do. Let's see if they come out and do something for the university.
I think the hard